30 October 1999. The aircraft departed from the Los Angeles International Airport, California as EgyptAir Flight 990 for the destination Cairo with a scheduled intermediate stop at JFK. At 23:48, the plane landed at JFK and arrived at the gate about 0010. The total flight was of 10 hours from JFK to Cairo. So the flight had two designated crew members, each crew consisting of a captain and first officer. At 1:01, the aircraft began taxiing towards the runway. At 1:17:56, the pilots advised the local controller that they were holding short of the departure on the runway 22R and they were ready for takeoff. The controller instructed EgyptAir Flight 990 to taxi into position and hold on runway 22R. At 1:19:22, ATC instructed Flight 990 that it is cleared for takeoff. The first officer acknowledged the takeoff clearance, and the aircraft took off from runway 22R. Shortly after takeoff, the pilots of Flight 990 contacted ATC of New York, and ATC issued them a series of climb instructions. At 1:26:04, ATC instructed Flight 990 to climb to flight level 2303 and contact New York Air Route Traffic Control Center. At 1:35:52, New York Air Route Traffic Control Center instructed Flight 990 to climb to flight level 330. At 1:40, the airplane was climbing to its assigned altitude. The relief first officer told to command first officer, "I am not going to sleep at all. I might come and sit for 2 hours," and then indicating that he wanted to fly his portion of the trip at that time. Relief first officer is a pilot who relieves the first officer in command and occupies the cockpit's right seat above the altitude of 20,000 feet when the autopilot is mostly on. "But I slept." "You mean you are not going to get up?" "You will get up. Go and get some rest and come back." "You should have told me. You should have told me this. You should have said I will work first. Just leave me a message. Now I am going to sit beside you. I am not sleepy. Take your time sleeping, and when you wake up, whenever you wake up, come back." "I'll come either way, come work the last few hours, and that's all." "No, that's not the point. It's not like that. If you want to sit here, there's no problem. I'll come back to you. I mean, I'll eat and come back to you. All right?" "Fine. Look here, sir. Why don't you come so that you want them to bring your dinner here? And I'll go to sleep." "That's good. With your permission, Captain." At 1:41:51, the airplane leveled at its assigned altitude of flight level 330. At 1:47:19, ATC instructed EgyptAir 990 to change radio frequencies for better communication coverage. The command captain of EgyptAir Flight 990 acknowledged and reported on the new frequency. At 1:48:03, "Excuse me, while I take a quick trip to the toilet before it gets crowded, while they are eating, and I'll be back to you. Go ahead, please." At 1:48:40, the relief first officer stated quietly, "I rely on God." There were no sounds or events recorded by the flight recorders that would indicate that an airplane anomaly or other unusual circumstances preceded the relief first officer's statement, "I rely on God." At 1:49:45, the autopilot was disconnected. Aside from the very slight movement of both elevators, the left elevator moved from about 0.7 to about 0.5 nose of deflection, and the right elevator moved from about 0.35 degree nose up to about 0.3 degree nose down deflection. The airplane remained in flight level 330 for about 8 seconds after the autopilot was disconnected. At 1:49:48, the relief first officer again stated quietly, "I rely on God." At 1:49:53, the throttle levers were moved from their cruise power setting to idle. Then the airplane began to rapidly pitch nose down and descend. From 1:49:57 to 1:50:05, the relief first officer quietly repeated, "I rely on God," 7th additional time. At 1:50:06, Captain entered the cockpit and asked, What's happening? 1:50:06 to 1:50:07. During this time, the relief first officer stated for the 10th time, "I rely on God." At 1:50:08, the airplane exceeded its maximum operating airspeed. Then master warning alarm began to sound. At 1:50:08, the relief first officer stated quietly for the 11th and final time, "I rely on God." From 1:50:21 to 1:50:23, the engine start lever switches for both engines moved from the run to the cutoff position. From 1:50:24 to 1:50:27, the throttle levers moved from their idle position to full throttle. The speed brake handle moved to its fully deployed position. From 1:50:31 to 1:50:37, the captain repeatedly stated, "Pull with me." But the elevator surfaces remained in the split condition, with the left surface commanding nose up and the right surface commanding nose down. At 1:50:38, the airplane climbed to about 25,000 feet and changed heading from 80° to 140°. After that, it started a second descent, which continued until the airplane impacted the ocean. The investigation was done by NTSB, and according to NTSB, the airplane's nose-down movements did not result from a failure or elevator control system or any other airplane failure. The NTSB determines that the probable cause of the EgyptAir Flight 990 accident is the airplane's departure from normal cruise flight and subsequent impact with the Atlantic Ocean as a result of the relief first officer's flight control inputs. The reason for the relief first officer's actions was not determined. But Egypt didn't agree with the final report of NTSB. An Egyptian Civil Aviation Authority carried out its own investigation and issued a report that rejected the possibility of relief first officer had caused the crash. The Egyptians found that the elevator control mechanism caused the problem, and that everyone in the cockpit was working together to regain control up to the time the plane hit the water. The NTSB investigation and its result drew criticism from the Egyptian government. There was some evidence that one of the right elevator's power control units may have suffered a malfunction, and the Egyptian investigation mentioned this as a likely cause of the crash. It is the right of their family members and public to know the real reason of the crash. But these two investigation reports are still putting everyone in the dark, and it doesn't seem that the reality will ever come out. This much for today. If you are watching until now, then please support us by liking the video and subscribing our channel. Thank you for watching and have a good day ahead.